Hello everyone, welcome to the second part of this tutorial series. In this episode we are going to set up health and the corresponding HUD. We are going to heavily rely on the Breath of the Wild UI, but I would invite everyone to mix it up for yourself at some point. You will notice in our UI that some elements will be missing, and this is simply because those will be tied to mechanics we have yet to set up. I have created some custom UI sprites that will be added in the description as well. Before we start, I would like to thank all of my Patreon supporters for the amazing support. This scene will be made available on Patreon as it gets updated. So in the first episode we set up our basic player, melee interaction and some basic movement. In this episode we're going to set up some basic stats and we'll be using the stats module for that, but we will also need to install something else that comes with the stats module. So if we go to module manager, we actually have our stats examples. Please make sure you actually install these as well, or enable as it's called, and this will generate some basic stats for us. So if we go to preferences and attributes, we will have health and mana already there, which is really useful and allows us to skip a couple of steps. Now, while we're here, we're also going to change this color, and this color is not just something you will see in the editor. This is actually the color that decides the color of the health bar in our UI. So I'm going to set this to red straight away as the hearts are red, and something we already did. So on our player, let's add this stats component, and you will see our health bar is red already. Now we need to display this in our UI, of course, so let's create an empty and let's call this user interfaces. And yes, this implies there will be multiple, and that is definitely the case. Now let's create our canvas as well. Now if you don't have a canvas yet, it will also create this event system, and this is a necessary component, so please leave it in there. And in order to display this canvas the correct way, we're going to switch to 2D view and have it here. There we go. Now there's a couple of options when it comes to scaling for your UI. I'm going to do scale with screen size, and I'm going to set this to 1080p, so 1920 by 1080. And this will automatically scale correspondingly. So if I go to game and press play, it won't display anything just yet, obviously, as it's empty, but I just always do this just the once, just to make sure it actually updates this one. So this canvas, let's rename this to HUD. Inside our HUD, we're going to create some empties, so let's call the first one health bar. Let's create our toolbar. And let's create our minimap. Now these are all the elements we're going to set up for this video. The toolbar for now will mainly just be visual, so there won't really be anything there yet, but it's just nice to already have it in our scene, and we'll make this interactive once we set up our actual inventory. The minimap is going to display the map itself, just no objects or markers yet, but that's something we'll do later as well, but at least we'll already have a minimap. So let's get started with our health bar. Now the health bar is one of the most basic and most important things. So let's get started by adding two images. So UI image. And we'll actually just add this one for now. And let's add our first image. So this will be a custom image I created. And these will be our hearts. Now let me drag this out. And there we go. So let's actually keep this here and drag up our entire health bar just to group everything together. Now in the intro you might have seen that there were only two different ones, so 3 different hearts and not 12. But by default we're actually going to set up all 12, and I'll show in a bit why we're doing that as well. But there's actually a pretty good reason for that. So we're going to keep it like this, and we're going to duplicate this image again, and we're going to start naming these. And this image will actually be a bit darker, so something like this, or even darker. There we go. And let's drag this behind. And let's rename this to health bar delay, and the first one to health bar. Now the color of these hearts that I set in here literally won't matter, so just keep it to white as it will be overwritten anyway. So there's literally no point in setting anything here. Now we do need to change a couple of things. So the first thing we're going to do is one in regards to image type, and let's start off with the top one. So with health bar delay, set this to filled. I'm going to do horizontal, and we're going to start left. Now let's do the same here, filled, horizontal, and left. Now this is the effect we're getting. So these are the hearts that would be draining. So as you can see right now, if we drain this, you would have this effect. Obviously if you would set it to radial 360, it would work as a circle. So that's something really cool we'll be using at some point as well, just not for our hearts. So let's keep this at horizontal, and this is the effect we want to see. There we go. So yeah, we're going to keep all of this exactly like this. Now this is actually really big, so let me make that a bit smaller. So let's just drag the entire thing. Let's do 0.5, 0.5. I think that's a bit better. There we go. Yeah, that looks all right. Cool. So there we have our health bar. Now obviously we'll need to add some things to actually make this function like a health bar. So on our health bar delay, we're going to add our first attribute UI, and let's make sure we select health. And yeah, that's it. Everything else we're going to be keeping the same. So that's step 1. Now the important part will be step 2, and that's actually on the HUD itself. So let's add our attribute UI to the HUD. Let's select health yet again, and we're going to drag in that health bar in color, and this is exactly the reason why the color is automatically set by the attribute. And we're going to add the health bar again to the fill image, because that's the effect it's going to have. Now let's actually give this a try and see if it works or if we missed something. And nice reminder, let's skip this for now. And there we go, we have our hearts. Now I'm definitely going to change the color red here a bit. It's definitely not my favorite tint, so yeah, I need to give that a slightly different tint. But there we go, those are our hearts. Now we will need to change this. So our value is a lot too high because we have too many hearts. But the reason I added 12 is because 12 will be my end goal. And you know, you can alter that. You know, this is just a Photoshop image, and just change this to a different, you know, just cut it basically. But 12 is the number of hearts I want to get in the end, which is maybe a lot. And we're going to go to preference here, go to attributes, go to health, going to definitely change this to a darker color, darker red, that's better. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to cut this value to 0.25. Now the reason for 0.25 is because 3 hearts is, well, 1/4 of 12, and that's the amount of hearts we're going to start with. And we'll be creating a system that will allow you to upgrade your health to, well, more hearts. So let's press play again. And right now we only have 3 hearts. Now we need to make sure this scales with everything else, and we'll definitely be doing that. So we forgot to add our delay image to the value fill image on the delay bar. So this is the black bar or dark gray bar you see behind it, and this needs to scale along. So that's why we need to add this as well. Now the next step is going to be our toolbar, and the toolbar will display just 2 images for now. I'm going to add, let's remove that. I'm going to add 3 already, simply because I already made them, so it just makes sense to already create them as well. And I'm going to call this one selector. There we go. Let's just add this one first. Now for this, I'm actually going to be relying on one of the assets we got from the Fantasy Magic bundle, or whatever it was called exactly, and I'm pretty sure it's just called D-pad. There we go. So we have our button D-pad, and I'm going to drag that in. And this is really like what it looks like in Zelda, and maybe that's a bit too much, but I thought it was pretty cool. Obviously some custom images with the keys you'll actually be using would make more sense, and unless you are actually going to be using the keypad, which is obviously completely fine. Now I'm going to put this below our second heart so it aligns a bit. And the reason for that is because in the beginning, and especially for a long time, you'll start off with this and it just looks nicely aligned. I'm going to duplicate this one and let's rename it to sword. I'm already going to add the shield as well. I know we didn't set that up as a mechanic yet, but I already created the image, so I might as well just set it up. Now, as you can see, I'm using some sizes I already tried out, and yeah, I know that's cheating a bit, but if you already know what result works, why not use it? There we go. And I'm going to keep the sword here, drag our shield to the other side. Let's make sure this is nicely aligned in the middle. And the same with our sword. There we go. And what I did here is I actually used some game creator icons and I made them sprites and I made them white in Photoshop. So these are actually game creator default icons, and yeah, I just changed the look of them. So shield and sword. Now I'm going to turn off our shield for now because we don't actually have one as a player yet, but you know, at least it's already there for when we actually set it up. And I know this is just visual, but it's nice to already have it in there. It matches our functionality and it will be easier to set this up if we've already added it. Now for our minimap, I will be using a unofficial module of Game Creator. It's called UI Components, and it has a minimap system that by default just works with Game Creator. It's just wonderful, really, and I know there's a lot of assets out there. I know you could set it up yourself, but I'm all for saving time if possible, especially if something just works better. So I'm going to go into pfetch labs, UI components, and prefabs. I'm going to take this minimap, drag it in here, and you'll see it displays. Then we're going to drag it inside of our minimap folder here, the MTB created. And I'm actually not going to do that. Let me drag it out first and remove this one. I wasn't entirely sure if this was necessary, so just going to skip any testing, and I'm just going to add a panel because I'm pretty sure it's supposed to rely on a panel. And there we go. Let's rename this panel to Minimap, and let's remove our background. Now I know this was a bit confusing, but most of the UI components stuff relies on panels, so I just don't want to take the risk in it not working. So let's actually grab our minimap, and I'm going to drag this all to the right. There we go. Yet again, I have some custom images here and I'll be using those. So compass marker. So I'm going to go to my compass marker. So here we have our pointer. I'm going to drag in my own image, and I'm going to make this orangey as it is in Breath of the Wild, something like that. Seems about right. Added a little shadow so it looks alright. And I'm going to do something a bit strange here, but I'm going to use a overlay image for the indicator. And the reason for that is because otherwise it's simply too bright. And you know, obviously you can change this, you don't need to do this, but I just thought it looked better. And fix this little width issue that is on 150, and then it all matches perfectly. So that's our minimap. Now it won't work straight away, we just need to add one little thing, and I'm going to add that here. It's a trigger. On start, I'm going to add the actions here just to keep it organized. Display minimap. And we need to drag in some features. Let's lock this. So this is actually an easy feature in Unity. You can lock a current panel in the inspector. That way, even if I click on this, it will just keep these. Sometimes it's just really useful. And this is pretty straightforward. So map manager, minimap, raw texture, and panel. It's asking for the position, so bottom right. So placement will look like this. And if you want to have it in the right corner, all you really need to do is go here to your action, display minimap, and just change this to bottom right. And that's it. So there we have it. We have our hearts, we have our minimap, and yeah, there's nothing to see here because it's all plain. So let's actually demonstrate that it works. So let's add a cube here. Where is that cube? Well, that's not in our scene, so let's put that in the middle. Let's focus on that. And let's just drag it here. Now if we go back to our game view, you will see the cube displayed here. So just to make sure it all works, our cube is now on the minimap. So pretty cool. Now in order to demonstrate that the health actually works, I'm just going to create a really simple action. Trigger on start. Let's add our actions here. This is a bit fast, but just to demonstrate that we're actually using health. And there we go. So this is a really simple action set that will trigger on start and it will just subtract health. I just want to demonstrate that we're actually taking health here. Taking damage, sorry. And as you can see, we're losing health. So yeah, pretty cool. So that's it, a simple demonstration that it all works. So that's it for this part, a really basic setup, but we need these essential things in order to do everything else in our game. So hope you enjoyed this and I will see you the next episode.